Oh, hey guys, so while I was working on this video, I accidentally deleted one of the wrong files. I split it into two little segments. So, to get you caught up to speed, what I did at the beginning of the video that I accidentally deleted is I renamed ship to player. All you have to do is do right click, rename. So I'll rename this back to ship. And it says you are renaming a file. Do you want to update the references? If you click yes, it renames it, and then it changes the name in the code everywhere that it's referenced. And now I'm going to change it back. So I did that for ship. I changed enemy ship into enemy. I changed test world into level, which I typoed, and I didn't notice until now. And then I also added a bullet class, which we will do in a little bit. So sorry for that. That's all that you missed. But today we're going to be taking a look at making our game, and yeah, we're gonna make bullets shoot out of the player. It's gonna be pretty cool. All right. So now that we're in main, what we're going to do is we're going to use this method called define, and it's a static method of input. So you can call it using the input class, and what it takes is a string and then keys, and you see that there's this ellipsis before it. That means you can put in as many keys as you want, and you could also probably technically put in multiple variable types, like you could plug in stuff, but that doesn't sound good. All right, so we're going to take this and make it just a different way of doing input that we already have. It's not going to change functionality at all. It's just going to change our code architecture. All right. So what we can do here is we can put in left as a string, and then use my little import shortcut. All right. Key.left. All right. And oops, I forgot to do that for input. New input. All right, so that should import it. If not, these are your two imports: net.flashpunk.utils.input and net.flashpunk.utils.key. So we have left right here, and now what we're going to do is we're going to go into player, and instead of checking key.left, we're going to replace that with left as a string. And if you run this, you'll see that it works exactly the same. So what's the benefit of this? Why? It's a little less typing here, but I had to type all this over here. Like I said with the ellipsis, is that you can put multiple keys in here. So if you put key.a and you run it, if you press the A key, it moves now. You could add as many as you want. So you could have, like, you could do numpad 4 if you wanted, or J if you want to do IJKL. You know, there's lots of different possibilities there, and that makes it really nice for when you're doing stuff with different control schemes. And if you're not sure what you're going to definitely use, like if you're going to have a jump button, it's way easier to remember jump than, oh, I think I assigned jump to Z, you know, when you're coding. And then it also makes it really easy to change things. This is a big one. If you want to change your jump button halfway through game development, or the game's development, all you have to do is go back to this line right here and change these keys. You don't have to go into every single file that uses jump. So input.define is a brilliant thing, and I'm really glad that it's here. So definitely use it. We're going to use input.define right, key.right, and key.d. All right, so replace it over here, and what we're going to do is we're also going to have, instead of this 2 here, we're going to have private var speed, which is an int, which is equal to 2. All right, so now we can do that. We'll run it. You can do AD left and right. You could press all 4 of them at the same time and have nothing happen. And it still works exactly the same. Just now we have speed up here as a variable that we can change. So instead of having to go in and do 2 and 2, you can just go up here and change it to 3, change it to 4, whatever you want. And you can also change it, you can also use the speed variable in other places that you'd want it, and then you'd only have to change it once up here. That's the really nice thing about variables, is that you don't have to hard code everything. You can, you know, make your code flexible, and that really helps. Also, another thing, if you ever have an if statement like this that only has one line in here, technically what an if statement does is it reads the next line. That's all it does. And it says, oh hey, there's a curly bracket. So then it does everything inside the curly brackets. So if you remove it, it reads the next line, and it says, hey, there's not a curly bracket, so I don't have to do a block, I just have to do this line. And it'll work exactly the same. This is how I prefer to usually do one-lines. I guess you could also do this one, but we're going to remove it anyway. So let's delete that. So you can see that like it made our code a lot more condensed. It's kind of cleaner. It's just coding style. So if you guys want to do it that way, you definitely can. But if you do want to use the brackets, that's cool too. I used to always do that, and then one day I don't want to do that anymore. We're going to jump back to main, and we're going to do input.define shoot key dot space key dot z key dot x. Add whatever keys you want. Like, this is up to you. You could make up and w be shoot as well. Do whatever you want. This is your first game. Experiment. You know, try different things. Maybe you'll find a really cool keyboard. What am I trying to say? Keyboard alignment? Keyboard? I don't know. All right. So what we're gonna do here is if input dot pressed for the time being space. Since I don't know what's gonna happen in here necessarily, sometimes by default I will do curly brackets, even if it is going to be one line, but because I don't know what's going to be in there. So trace shot. So this is the easy way to make sure that it works, which it doesn't. Oops. Shoot. It should be shoot, not space. Okay. So, yep, it works. So what we're going to do here is we're going to shoot a bullet. So let's create a new class called bullet. Extends entity. I guess what we can do is create a private var sprite, which is an image. We will, instead of doing a new image, what we'll do is we'll use image's static method create circle. Let's do a radius of 3, and we can just do 0 ff like that. Actually, you wouldn't even need to do it because that's the default argument. So just create a circle with a radius of 3, so it'll be 6 pixels wide, 6 pixels tall, and set it as a graphic. So if we go back to player, what we can do here is we can do world, which is the entity's world, and you can add a new bullet. But you don't see anything, and that's because it's actually being added way up here. If I move it, you'll see that I've got 13 bullets selected. Also, if you ever want to select anything and move it, you can either click on the square, or you can select all of them, and then you hold down shift, and then you click, and you can move them around. If you try clicking without shift, you'll just get this, but press down shift and you can move it around. I think there's another keyboard shortcut, but I can't remember for other stuff. So yeah, little debugger stuff. So right now this is fine, except we need to add the bullet to our current position. So the easy way to do that is to use the Entities Constructor. So what we can do here is we can plug in an X that's a number and a Y that's a number. So first, let's do X number, Y number. Alright, and then plug in X and Y right here. So this will call entity super, and it'll basically do x is equal to x, y is equal to y, except this dot x and this dot y. So that's literally what it's doing. You could even check that out yourself. You can either right click and press where is it? Go to declaration, there it is. Or you can click on it and press F4 and it'll bring you to the Entities Constructor. As you can see, that's exactly what it's doing in here. And there's also another one right here, graphic, which actually sets the graphic as the graphic. So instead of doing this, you could just type in sprite right here and it'd do exactly the same thing. Alright, so now since we have these arguments here for the constructor of bullet, we have to supply them down here. So what we will do is we'll just plug in the player's X and Y, and then, as you can see, when you move and shoot, you spawn bullets. Now, we have a problem. They're spawning way up here. Or way over here, rather. Like, it's okay that they're this high, because it makes it look like it's coming out of the front of the ship. But we want it to come out of the middle of the ship. So how do we do that? The problem is that the entity's origin is in the corner. However, we can move that. And that's what this square actually is the entity's origin. That's its XY coordinate. So while you can... Let's see here. How do I want to explain this? Alright, so what you actually do when you do an offset is you change the sprite's offset, and then you also change the collider's offset, or the hitbox. So right here, the hitbox, we'll do this first. Sprite.width divided by 2 and sprite.height divided by 2. So you're like, what? There's more arguments? Set hitbox. There's width, height, origin X, and origin Y. And remember, you can do these. Width is equal to sprite.width, origin X. These are just nice, convenient methods, so you can put it in one line. And it makes sense, too, because it's all in order. Alright, so now if we run this, and we look in the debugger, you'll see that the hitbox is now perfectly around the XY coordinate. Or if you want to look at it differently, the XY coordinate is perfectly centered inside the hitbox. So now all we need to do is get the image over. And what's really nice about this is there's a method called center origin, which automatically does it for you. So look at that. So now you've got this hitbox, and now if we shoot, you'll see that it's coming out the middle of the ship now, which is okay. Alright, but now the bullet, we're going to want to do the same thing. Sprite.center origin. And now you'll see that it's perfectly in the middle of the ship. Alright, now you're probably wondering, well, how do I get it below the ship? Why isn't it below the ship? And the reason why is that everything in FlashPunk is by default added to what's called layer 0. And whatever is added last gets drawn on top of everything else. So when you add new things, they're always going to appear over things that are in the same layer. So what you do is you change the layer. So we could either change bullet's layer to be a bigger number, which would mean that it's further into the scene. Negative numbers are towards you, positive numbers are away from you. Or we could change the players to be negative, which is what we're going to do. So we'll do layer is equal to -1, and now when we shoot bullets, they will always be underneath us. And that also means that since everything else in the game is on layer 0, the player will always show up on top of things. And you can change that, you know. There is no limit really to what numbers you can put here. As long as you don't go outside the max integer value, which is somewhere around 2.5 million, you should be fine. Like the FlashPunk isn't going to get slower if you start using bigger numbers. It just checks each number of each entity and then sorts it based off of the order. So if you want to like be like, oh, I want my HUD to be on top of everything. So you put in negative 10,000. It's not going to be any different than putting in -1. No speed difference. So don't worry. You can do that. And we actually will do that. I usually do like -100 for my HUD. So now we've got all this set up. The next thing to do is to get the bullet to move. So override update. So we can remove super.update. Let's make this easy and do y minus equals speed, and we will put a speed variable up here, private var speed int, which is equal to 2. And now we've got this bullet that shoots out of the front of our ship. But as you can see over here, the number of entity keeps going up. And if I were to go into the debugger and select everything and pull it down, you'll find out that, where are they? Oh, you know what? That only selects stuff currently on the camera. Well, what am I trying to say? The bullets still exist, and they're way up there, beyond the screen. And you know, it's like, well, why would I want all these bullets to still exist? Why would I want the game to keep updating? Why would I want to spend all that processing power on these bullets that are doing like nothing when I could be spending it on something else that does practically nothing? In this case, it's not a big deal. Like, the bullets, this is all they're doing each frame. It's not going to be a biggie unless you have maybe 10,000 of them on the screen, which could happen later. But what we'll do is we will do if y is less than 0, world.remove this. So now what will happen is when you shoot and it makes it to the top, it goes down. So we only have 2 entities, so we're gonna shoot a line of them, and you'll see as they go off the screen, they are gone. Now, if you look really closely, you'll notice that it disappears before it gets completely off the screen, and that's because when its Y position is 0, half of the image is still on the screen. So if you wanted to make that like better, you could do if y is less than negative sprite.height divided by 2, or it's just negative sprite.height. So that would be for this -6. So once it's beyond -6, it'll go away, and that was a bad spot to do it. Yeah, so one last thing that we're going to show in this tutorial is this memory right here. And this is how much memory on your computer, not on your hard drive, but in the RAM that your program's using. And when you shoot bullets, you'll see that it goes up and up and up and up. So if you're playing this game for hours, and that number keeps going up until the garbage collector kicks in and kills it, you know, it's not that great. And also, on top of that, we're going to find out in a second that what's causing that is also actually making our game slightly slower. So what's happening here is when you press shoot, you go into this line that adds things to the world. And you're like, what? Adding stuff to the world is slow? Not exactly. What's slow here is the new keyword. So what new does is it allocates memory. It says, hey, computer, I need a little bit of your RAM. And the computer says, okay, here you go. Here's my RAM. And then Flash then puts all the information into the RAM so it can store it there, because it needs somewhere to store the bullet information. So it does that, and then every time it calls new, the computer's got to be like, oh, what do you want? What do you want? And then it's got to reserve some memory, put it in there, and it's not going to be a big thing right now, but in different projects, and the bigger your bullet class gets, the more variables that it has, the more RAM that's going to require. So it's a good idea to use what's called the pool, the object pool programming design pattern. And FlashPunk has that built in, which is super great. So you don't even really need to understand it. All you need to do is know that you can recycle bullets, or you can recycle any entity type in FlashPunk. So what you do here is instead of world.remove, you do world.recycle. All right? And that's the first step. All right? there's 2 more steps. Second off, this world.add, that's not what you want to do. You want to do world.create, and then you put in a type, bullet. Alright, now the only problem with this is that it needs a default constructor. And if you remember from the last series, a default constructor is a constructor that has no arguments. Alright, so that's not a problem necessarily until you remember that we have to somehow position the bullets X and Y. So this is where things get a bit confusing. You're like, okay, so if I take that out, I can use the recycling and possibly make my game faster, but then I'm not going to be able to position the bullets. Well, all you need to do is take everything out of there and put it in a function that you'd call reset. So take these arguments out, put them in here, take these out and put them in here, and then here, create actually returns the entity. So you can do var b bullet is equal to world.create bullet. So if we run this, it should oh, oops. It won't work because we're trying to use the entities constructor now. So this dot x is equal to x, this dot y is equal to y, and graphic is equal to sprite. Alright. I was thinking this was going to happen, but I wasn't sure. Okay, so the problem here is that create returns an entity, as you can see in this this pop-up right here. On the far right side, it says entity as its return type, and we're trying to save it to a bullet. All right, if we did entity here, it would fix it, but then we can't access the reset method because it thinks it's an entity and not a bullet. So what we do is we tell it to treat it as a bullet. So it's basically taking a variable type and turning it into another one because it is that. And this is also kind of dangerous. You can, oh, nice. You could technically typecast something that's not a bullet into a bullet, but that's only if you're doing something crazy. So you shouldn't have to worry about that. But now we can use this reset, and it should work just like before. Okay, so before we do wrap this up, what exactly is the difference between using the recycle and using the add new? Why do we need to change a few things? So if you add a new bullet, you're instantiating a new instance. So you're basically creating a bullet. Okay? And that's a new object that exists inside the computer. And every time you call new, you're creating a new object and a new object and a new object. And Flash has to store all these inside the RAM, and then eventually its garbage collector comes in and takes them out. Because it's like, oh, hey, you're not using this anymore. Okay, I'll get rid of them for you. What create does is under the hood, it still calls new. But instead of having it so when you remove it, it just flicks it away, it puts it inside this thing called a pool. And if there are any bullets left in that pool, when you call create, it won't call new. It'll just take one of the bullets out and use that. And that's why you need the reset method here, because you're using an old bullet that has been recycled. So you have to reset all of its properties, because if you didn't reset it, it would still have its X and Y positions of its old thing. And then you also have to reset it if it's a new one too, because it's set to the defaults. So if that's a bit confusing to you, don't worry. It's just a good practice to use, and as you get better at programming, you can definitely look into the pattern more. I didn't understand it when I was learning FlashPunk, but once I implemented it myself in one of the engines that I built, it started to make sense. So, you know, it's just, programming's always a learning experience. So if you don't understand something right away, don't feel bad. We were all there, and it'll click eventually. So we've got a pretty good start on our game. We have we have an enemy that does nothing, a player that moves left and right, and bullets that shoot out of you. So we will be doing another tutorial, hopefully tomorrow, and that will be a bit of an interesting one. We're going to have the enemy be positioned at the top, probably. The player will be positioned at the bottom. I'm getting some assets that we can use for the game, so you'll be able to make it all pretty. This was Indie Tutorials, ActionScript 3 2.4. I'm Brett Hudson, this is Indie Function, and I am out. Catch you next time.